Welcome to the Her Story Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Her Story Circle. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating young woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Hi, Gertrude. Thanks for having me. My name is Erin Pavane. I am originally from Manhattan, from New York. And my story, where do we start? So I grew up in New York, and I grew up in a house where, money didn't really make sense. It wasn't because there wasn't any, but it was because it never felt stable. My parents got divorced when I was really young. My father was successful, but not really there. He was more of a paycheck. And my mom, who I love deeply, did the absolute best that she could, but money came in and out in a way that felt very unpredictable. There was alimony, there was child support, and on paper, we should have been okay, but I definitely don't remember feeling okay. And really what I remember most as a defining moment in my childhood was her standing in the kitchen saying over and over again, I don't know how we're going to keep this house. And as a kid, I didn't question it. I just didn't want to lose the house. So I tried to fix it. And I remember saving up my allowance from my dad for a few months. Maybe I got 15, 20 bucks, and I gave it to her. And, in my mind, I thought if I gave her this money, we wouldn't lose everything, right? And somewhere in that process, I really stopped being a kid. Well, I'm still a kid, but I became someone who really started to believe that I needed to create stability. So no matter what, and that belief has shaped everything that I've done my entire life. So, I went through the next few decades of my life thinking that if I could just control everything, I'd never feel that way again. But what I didn't understand at the time was this. Is that, you don't find yourself by holding everything together, right? You find yourself in those moments where everything falls apart. And I wound up following this path to corporate. I was in different roles. I was with different companies. I was climbing that corporate ladder in corporate America. And then I started a business with someone I trusted at the time. And for a few years, we built something extremely successful, more successful than I thought it would be. But what no one tells you is that success doesn't protect you from toxic environments or from losing yourself. Sometimes it can actually hide it. And, that's how it was for me, and how my last chapter ended. And even though it felt like it was sudden at the time, really in retrospect, it didn't happen all at once. It happened very slowly. My voice started to disappear. Decisions were being made without me. Conversations I should have been in and been a part of, I wasn't. And every time I started to kind of question these things with my business partner, it was framed to me as, this is what's best for the company. So I started to question myself. Maybe I was the problem. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I was a control freak. And then there was a moment that I remember that made all of my thoughts undeniable. There was this one guy in our office. He was our top producer in sales. He was 6'3", big presence, the kind of presence that takes up all the oxygen in a room when he walks in. And when he didn't get the answer he wanted, he got angry, and he did not hold back. He'd stand over me. He'd be raising his voice. He'd be getting in my space. And he was so close that I could literally feel his breath while he's yelling at me. And I remember feeling shocked, like a deer in headlights, and feeling really small. And I even remember the last time, like literally rounding my shoulders to physically make myself smaller in a company that I had built, And when I asked my business partner to address it, I was told in not so many words, he gets a pass. He makes the company too much money. And in that moment, I realized I was not being protected. I was being traded. And I hadn't just lost my voice, I had lost my place. And the hardest part is that I didn't lose my voice at all. It didn't lose it all at once. I kind of gave it away, I think, little by little, every time I stayed quiet when I knew something wasn't right. And it wasn't about what was best for the company. I realized that. This was now the culture. So I made a decision. I said, this gets addressed or I'm not coming into the office anymore, because I wasn't willing to stay in an environment where I had to tolerate that, right? And as the words left my mouth, I already knew the answer. And that was the first time that my identity really cracked. And, everything I thought I was, a founder, a leader, someone in control, none of these things were true anymore. And so I stopped going into the office. I started working from home, working remotely. And it's not because I was weak, not because I didn't like confrontation, but really because I refused to stay somewhere that required me to shrink in order to survive. And that ultimately was the beginning of the end. So from there, we bought an RV, we packed up our lives, our 2 dogs, my wife, all our essentials, and we started driving. And I remember this one moment. We're driving down I-95. The sun is coming through the windshield. I'm finally able to breathe after months of stress and sleepless nights. And I thought, wow, I stood up for myself. Life is good. This is a new chapter. And then it hit me. It wasn't just a fresh start. There was no going back. I had lost everything I defined myself by. And this was my business, my title, my income, certainty, everything just gone. And there I was in 200 square feet of space with absolutely zero idea what was coming next. I had no plan. And I realized in that moment how much of my identity was tied to things that can literally disappear just overnight. And there was something really kind of humbling about that simplicity, like your entire life, everything that matters fits in this tiny space. Kind of an interesting experience. And I felt really lost and directionless. Who was I when everything I built, was no longer there to define me? And I obviously didn't have an answer. And so I did what I imagine most people do. I tried to go backwards. I applied for jobs. I looked for something, quote unquote safe so I could feel in control again. But deep down, I knew there was no going back. I knew I couldn't go back to corporate. I couldn't go back to building, somebody else's vision, because going back would have meant trying to become someone that I no longer was, right? And once your identity breaks, you don't rebuild the same person. You build a new one. And because I didn't have clarity yet, I ignored that little voice inside my head and I just started moving. I took a job, one job led to another. I was in an industry I didn't know, a role where I had to learn everything from scratch all over again and kind of reinvent myself. And somewhere in that experience, I started to become someone new, which was exciting. I threw myself into it. There were different people. It was a different pace. It was a different perspective. And for the first time in a really long time, I started to feel that momentum again, the vision of what it feels like to kind of, build something. And then I was excited to step into this new, version of myself. And so when I threw myself into it, I was, kind of learning, adapting, evolving. And I got to the point where I was ready to take a next step and kind of apply all of these amazing learnings. And then life hit me. My wife had a stroke, 35 years old. We sat in that hospital room for 4 days, 4 nights. I was sleeping there. I was just not knowing if she was going to walk again, if she was going to work again, if she would be the same person she was before she went in there. everything I thought mattered did not matter anymore. And, sitting there on the stroke unit, surrounded by people at least twice our age, I just sat there thinking again about how quickly everything in life can change and just turn upside down. And I just realized that life doesn't wait for you to feel ready. And in that moment, everything I thought I had planned just suddenly became irrelevant. And the question wasn't, what's the safe move? The question was, if I was going to move, you know, I wasn't going to be shrinking my life anymore. I had already done that. I had already kind of, been through that. And it was like a broken record inside my head. And I just kept thinking, something I heard in my 20s at my first ever professional conference. The speaker said, if not me, then who? And if not now, then when? And so instead of stepping back, I decided to jump in fully. And that decision changed everything. Definitely not overnight and certainly not perfectly, but it did change the trajectory of the next few years. And that decision led me to a path where I had the opportunity to step into business as a partner. I had no salary. It was literally just a belief, taking a bet on myself. And this was not a business people were lining up to buy into, but I saw the potential in it. And within a year, we grew from 16 charters in their best year to 80 in our first year together. And, really what mattered most, it wasn't even about the success. It was, more about learning. And the moment I stopped trying to control everything was actually the moment everything started to come together. And, that's really changed, I guess, my entire view on the world. You're not your title, you're not your business, you are not the life that you've built. You are who you choose to become. And, when all of that is stripped away, and if everything you've built feels like it's falling apart right now, maybe it's not the end, it's the beginning. Maybe this is the moment that you finally get to become who you were meant to be. So if you're in a moment right now where, you're feeling like things are uncertain, where, you've lost your direction, where you're questioning everything, I just have kind of, three I guess thoughts I'll leave you with of kind of how I reinvented my own self. And so, the first thing is the stabilize, right? So for me, it wasn't about just stabilizing, like getting, for me, it was sitting in an RV with no plan, choosing not to panic. You definitely don't need clarity. You need grounding. The second thing for me was surrounding myself with good people. So choosing who you spend time with does matter, because I learned this the hard way. And, the wrong people will definitely make you question yourself. The right people will inspire you. They'll bring you up. They'll remind you of who you are at your core and, help you realize your potential. So if your environment is shrinking you or the people around you aren't bringing you up, leave. And the last thing is just to step forward. You don't need a perfect plan. There is never going to be the right time, just one bold step forward. And for me, it was, getting on a plane to Australia with no idea what was next and how it would work out. Clarity doesn't come before action, it comes because of it. And so I'll leave you with the last words that changed my life, because there is no perfect moment, but if not you, then who? And if not now, then when?
Thank you so much, Erin, for sharing your story with us this morning. Absolutely fascinating what you've done in the last few years. I'd like to take you back, though, to that moment when you made the decision. Can you remember what it felt like internally at that point when you realized that enough was enough, you had to make a change?
What it felt like in trade was like I guess it was kind of like a visceral reaction. It was just, I had been kind of verbally attacked a few times. And this one time it was just, I just couldn't believe it. It was just, I physically just couldn't be in that room anymore. I could not let that happen one more time.
Now, as you were going through this struggle, going through this season of turmoil, what did you lose physically and emotionally?
Physically, I lost a lot of sleep. I definitely had, I've never struggled with sleep ever in my entire life, other than kind of that one stage in my life. I had insomnia. I was up with racing thoughts, and that definitely took a toll on me physically and emotionally. I mean, I was exhausted all the time. I had zero capacity for anything. I mean, this consumed my entire existence. There was no room for anything else in my life beyond what I was experiencing.
It does take its toll.
Yeah.
So, do you ever feel like you were losing your voice or your identity prior to this? It must have been some warning signs.
Yeah, I mean, in retrospect, of course, there were signs, conversations happening without me, decisions that were happening without me that I should have been a part of, times I should have spoken up. But I think it was just, it happened so slowly. And I think, some people are just so persuasive, right? They just say the right things in the right way at the right time. And it makes you start to question yourself. And, I think that's really what happened in my case was, I'm a pretty strong type A, personality woman. And yeah, when I realized the position that I was in, I just was in disbelief. How could this happen to me? But it definitely happened over time.
So, what fears kept you stuck longer than you would have liked?
I don't even know that it was fear. I think it was just that I was so set in the fact that, like, this was my life. This was my business. Like, leaving it wasn't an option, right? It wasn't even a thought in my head that I would ever leave. I thought we were gonna run this business for the rest of our lives. Like, this is how I was gonna retire. And so for me, it was that coming to that realization that, wow, everything I thought was true isn't anymore,
Mm,
and needing to kind of rethink what the rest of my life was gonna look like.
hmm. That is
So
so
fear
crazy.
started there, I guess, in
Yeah.
some.
So, what did this decision cost you, and what did it give you, do you think?
It cost me my sanity for about a year and a half, a lot of it. Nervous breakdown, definitely had yeah, those were some tough times. Just everything we went through, it turned into a legal disaster. It was not a smooth ending or transition by any stretch of the imagination. But what did I gain? I mean, I just gained so much more confidence in myself, um, and awareness around me. And, as I've spoken to other entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs over the years about this, it's incredible how many other women have the exact same story. Not, with a guy hovering over them, but, just the same story of being bullied in their own workplace or by their own business partner, being pushed out of their own business. I mean, just different versions of the same thing. And I would say what I gained and what it gave me was really just being able to get to where I am today. I mean, I never liked being in an office, every day, but it was something I always thought I just had to do. Right. And so being able to have the freedom to kind of work from anywhere, and being in the career that I am now, I mean, I never thought there was a silver lining or a light at the end of the tunnel. So I'm very, very grateful for everything that's kind of shaped and gotten me to this point.
I love it. Now, during your rebuild, how did you begin rebuilding your life when you didn't have clarity? A lot of people want everything to be perfect first.
And I am one of those people. Uh, there, I realized I just had to move. It was like I had this fear. I was like, well, I'm not going to have an income pretty soon, right? Like, what am I going to do? And so I just was like, I'll just go back to corporate America. I'll just get a job and I'll figure it out. But I at least need health insurance and an income, right? Like, I knew those two things. So I figured instead of just like drowning in sorrow and in misery, just take action. And that's what I did. I mean, I just started applying for jobs and wound up in Australia. It's just like, it was a very kind of random thing that happened. It was a brand new industry, and it was exactly what I needed. It was the launching point of kind of what got me to here. And I knew it was never going to be forever, but I just also knew that I needed time to figure out what that next step was. And I needed to take action. For me, taking action is what gives me clarity, even if it's clarity that I'm going in the wrong direction. Right. So I think that's, yeah.
I like that. Now, what role did the people around you play in your transformation? Who were your support structures?
Yeah, I would say my wife, it put a big strain on our marriage, but she was my number one rock and support system through everything. I mean,
Mm,
she had to hear me complaining about the same thing over and over and over and wallowing and all of that. And then just my parents. I mean, they were just absolutely incredible. My father's an attorney, so that didn't hurt the situation. And just they were just all really supportive, and of course, friends as well. But it's definitely the core family and the kind of the nuclear core that was really really supportive.
I love that. So, what habits or mindset shifts helped you move forward?
Definitely exercise. um, you
Mm,
know, eating healthfully and exercising every day or almost every day, puts me in a really good headspace. I think I have a mind that never stops going. And some of the only times when I actually have a clear mind that's not filled with all the things I have to do and everything else is right either when I'm exercising or kind of right after. And I think a healthy mind. I used to drink caffeine, multiple times a day and eat not great things, and I have that afternoon kind of sluggish feeling. And changed my entire diet. I don't get that feeling anymore. I don't drink caffeine anymore. Some of those little changes have really had a significant impact on some of
that's
those things.
amazing. So, what is one belief that you had to unlearn to become the woman that you are today?
Things don't always turn out the way you think they are going to. My grandma always used to say, we make plans and God laughs. And when I was a kid, I had no idea what she meant by that. And today in life, I hear her voice saying that all the time in my head.
Mm, I love that. Always the words of the wise, right? So, if
Exactly.
there is a woman who is listening right now, is feeling stuck, what would you say to her?
It's the feeling is temporary, and take action, do something, surround yourself by women that inspire you. You know, yeah, try something new, come out, try a new hobby, meet new people, get inspired, take yourself out of your comfort zone, and amazing things happen when you do that. That's been my
That's
experience.
exactly what you did. I love it. So,
Yes.
what does reinvention mean to you now, Erin?
It's so interesting because I think reinvention, obviously in the dictionary, would mean the same thing to everyone, but I think for me, it just means that you don't have to become a whole new person to reinvent yourself. I never really understood what people meant. I think it's just, it's kind of like what they do in the army, right? They say like build back better. But like I was kind of stripped down. I had nothing. I was at ground zero and just kind of rebuilding with all the tools and knowledge. And I think for me, reinventing was not so much kind of continuing on a trajectory, but it was more of taking all the things I had learned from every career I had ever had, every person I had met, everything I had ever learned, and using all of that to kind of build something new, something fresh. I think we underestimate all the skills and experience and knowledge that we get throughout our lives and our careers. Even if you're in one kind of silo, the knowledge that you have and the experience that you have can be transferable to so many different things. And for me, that was what the reinvention was. It was taking all of that experience and knowledge and applying it to something new.
I love that. Now, my last two questions are a bit of a thought experiment. In the first one, I'm going to teleport you back. To the younger you, the young woman who found herself in a turmoil trying to figure things out. If you could go back and give yourself three nuggets of wisdom based on what life has taught you up until this point, what would those three nuggets of wisdom be?
To my, are we talking about my younger self?
Yes, if you go back to your younger self and give her three nuggets of wisdom.
I would tell her that everything is going to be okay. In the end, that everything you need is already here. The people that you need to surround yourself with, the experiences, everything is literally at your fingertips. You just have to open your eyes and your mind and be open to it and put yourself out there. And you'll be the president of something someday. That was what my first grade teacher told me. So that's
That is beautiful. Your first grade teacher was very right. She saw something in you that you didn't even see in yourself, and you have got to this point. That's beautiful. Now, if I could teleport you into the future this time, and we could go and sit and have a conversation with a 90-year-old you. She's sitting in her rocking chair, surrounded by her family. With your energy, you'll probably be on a dance floor somewhere doing something completely different. If you could teleport into the future to meet the wise woman who has led you up until this point, what will you say to her when you finally meet her? And I'll tell you the reason why I like to ask women this question. A lot of women don't realize the wise woman is already in us. And you said it, everything you need is already here. But we look outside of ourselves for answers, for solutions. You went deep, you went within to listen to your own promptings and your own instincts. What will you say to your wise woman when you finally meet her?
growing up, I didn't understand the importance of family. I know that might sound silly, and for some people, they never connect with their families, and that's a whole other story. But for me, it wasn't until I was really in my late 20s, 30s that I really started to have an appreciation for like my core family and how much they loved me. And I think I wish I had realized that sooner and been more appreciative, and spent more time with some of the people in my family, both that are still alive today and some that have passed. I think there's something to be said about family. The Another one is just not being afraid to take that leap forward. And sometimes you're going to fail, sometimes you're going to succeed, but if you don't try, you'll never know, and amazing things could happen. And the third, this is a tough one. I think people in general, just how important it is to surround yourself with good people that are going to bring you up and support you and celebrate your wins with you, because there are plenty of people out there. You're always going to have haters and people that want to bring you down. And I just think it's so important to just eliminate those people completely from your energy field.
Absolutely wonderful. Now, is there anything else I should have asked you and I didn't, Erin?
No, I think we've had a pretty good conversation that's covered a lot of my experience, my career. No.
Fantastic. Well, Erin, thank you so much for coming online and sharing your story with us today. It's always inspiring to see what is possible when one is hit with adversity, with change, unexpected things going on in your business life, and being able to rebuild the way you have done is really inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you, Gertrude. Thanks for having me.
And thank you to everybody who tuned in today. The Her Story Circle is not just a podcast. We're a social impact movement that brings you the stories and voices of women from all over the world. We share these stories to uplift you, to inspire you, to energize you, but most importantly, to help take you from where you are now to where you're trying to go. So if you are a woman who's feeling stuck, watch this video again. There are so many nuggets of wisdom that Erin has shared. Or if you know someone who's struggling, tag them on this video, share this on your social media, help us reach more women so they can find ways that they can navigate as well. I'll be back again tomorrow, everybody, with yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And Erin, thanks again for the interview.
Thank you.
Bye for now, everybody. Thank you for tuning into the Her Story Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the Her Story Circle podcast for more updates. And join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep making her story.